Good morning, everyone. My name is Kayan Bali. I am a tutor here at the Norman Manley Law School Legal Aid Clinic, and I want to welcome you to day 2 of our annual Legal Aid Clinic Fair under the theme of the Law of the Land, Sea and Me, charting a sustainable future for all. We've been treated with several presentations starting from yesterday afternoon on this theme, and that was day 1 of our fair. We continue today with day 2, and we have several presentations on an offer for you today. And we hope that you will find them interesting as well as useful as we contemplate the topic of how we treat with developments and the law to assist us in continuing on a sustainable path of development. For this morning, our first presentation will be by Ms. Taneisha Brown, treating with the question of a cooperative and looking at the legislative framework for cooperative societies in Jamaica. And she will be followed by our second presentation today by Dr. Gregory Roberts, who will be looking at the question of cooperatives as a tool for sustainability. We welcome you all and hope that you will have an enjoyable time. It will be a time of fruitful learning as we treat with both of these topics for the morning session. We do take the time to invite you to come on down to the Legal Aid Clinic at Gibraltar Hall Road on Thursday, when we will have an open fair day with several participants, providing information that you should find useful as we look at recovery after Hurricane Melissa and the legal implications there, as well as understanding the offerings of our stakeholders as we look at moving forward. To introduce our first speaker today, I invite Miss Alia Hyde. Miss Hyde is a second-year student at the Norman Manley Law School, a resident of Belize, and she'll be introducing our speaker this morning. Please come, Miss Hyde.
So, as Mrs. Bali indicated, the first speaker is our very own Miss Taneisha. Prior to her appointment, Miss Brown lectured in corporate and shortage law at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus. She holds an LLB with first class honors from UWI Cave Hill, a certificate of legal education from Norman Manley Law School, and a law and master's in corporate and commercial law with distinction from the London School of Economics and Political Science. She is admitted to practice in both Jamaica and Barbados. Ms. Brown has published in the areas of financial regulation and company law and brings both academic expertise and practical insight to her teaching. She is committed to mentoring future attorneys and advancing knowledge in corporate and commercial practice. She's passionate about guiding students and community members in understanding the law and its role in everyday. So help me welcome Ms. Brown.
Good morning, everybody. All right, so this morning's presentation takes us into an examination of, the mic is not cooperating, the cooperative societies legislation in Jamaica. And so my presentation is titled One Hand Wash the Other, Unpacking the Cooperative Societies Framework in Jamaica. Gotcha. All right, so what is a cooperative society? Now, the International Cooperatives Alliance defines cooperative societies as autonomous associations of people, usually of limited means. I'm sorry, that slide All right, so the definition from ICA is that it is an autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet their common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations through a jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. There's a slightly different definition on the slides. It says a cooperative society is an autonomous association of people, usually of limited means, who join together on a voluntary basis to further the economic goals of the members. And certainly the definition on the slide is the one that more closely resembles the definition in our Cooperative Societies Act, with the focus there being on economic goals. However, what the ICA is recognizing is that, of course, these associations could further other ends other than economic goals. And so they include in their definition social, cultural needs as well, social and cultural needs, as well as economic endeavors. Now, these associations are usually formed by persons of limited means. And so, therefore, it is one of those associations that small, medium, and micro enterprises could form in order um, to carry out their business endeavors. The common objective for which persons join together in these associations, a number of things. They may do so to market products, to purchase supplies, or to provide services such as housing, credit union, and thrift, to name a few. And the one that we are most familiar with, I think everybody, is the credit union. Of course, we all know about the credit union from your tiny, you open a little credit union account. Your mother will have a credit union account, and when you get to the requisite age, which in Jamaica is 16, you are able to become a member. At the heart of the cooperative, then, is what we in Jamaica call one hand wash the other, right? The model is one of community self-help as well as interdependence. Now, the one hand wash the other is just to say that you scratch my back, I scratch yours. There's this mutual aid that is happening among the members of the cooperative. And so I'm not sure what's happening with the clicker. Yes, but it's not moving. It's not moving. Yes, but it's not moving on this screen for some reason. Right? So the cooperative society is member established, member controlled, and member benefiting. Seems we're having some technical challenges, but I'm sure we'll sort that out. Now, the cooperative movement in Jamaica has its roots in post-emancipation Jamaica and has helped to drive economic growth and development in just about every area of society, right? And so with the right with the ex-slaves in post-emancipation Jamaica, we would have seen them begin to establish those partners, the partner plans that we informally use to save money. And so those are the early impressions of the societies that we have in Jamaica. Through cooperatives born of their will and determination to establish communities, ex-slaves, through the building of roads, schools, churches, and the development of agricultural lands, were able to advance in a society that was hostile to their socio-economic development. Before words like financial inclusion and unbanked were popular, cooperatives allowed poor Jamaicans to save and access loan financing via credit cooperatives, right? Consequently, cooperatives have been instrumental in poverty reduction and the development of communal financial efficiency. In the 1900s, People's cooperative banks were established, and these, of course, would have aided in agricultural development as they lent support to small farmers in Jamaica. In 1924, we saw the establishment of the Jamaica Banana Producers Association, which was formed to help banana producers compete with foreign multinationals. In 1939, the credit union concept was introduced by Father John Sullivan, a Jesuit priest, and in 1941, Father Sutherland formed what would eventually become known as the Solidarity Credit Union. In the 1950s, we saw the enactment of the Cooperative Societies legislation, and that is what will be examined today. In the 1960s, large parish-based credit unions were established. And so when we think about the St. Anne Cooperative Credit Union, for example, that came about round about that time. One of the interesting things is that, and of course, the credit unions grew throughout the 70s and 80s. And in the 90s, we saw them buoyant and resilient, even in the face of the banking crisis, which would have affected a number of banks in Jamaica, but our credit unions stood still, right? And so, to their credit, they continued to essentially uphold the financial stability of lower class, for the most part, Jamaicans during that time of instability. And so there's a lot of confidence, I believe, that Jamaicans hold in credit unions, right? Where persons might not have a bank account, they'll have a credit union account. Because, of course, the lending arrangements are more favorable to them in any event. Today, there are over 90 active cooperatives in Jamaica with assets under management valued at 200 million, with approximately 23 to 25 of them being credit unions. And so the credit union sector is still very vibrant, but also what we realize as well is that the cooperative societies are still also relevant and vibrant. Now, that number has gone down from somewhere in the hundreds to 90, but I think that even, and I'm sure Dr. Gregory will tell us about, going forward, how the societies will aid in sustainable development. And I have a thought or two as well post Melissa about how we should approach the formation of these societies, how we should perceive them in light of all that has happened. Because I think now the default setting is to proceed to form the limited liability company. But I do think that the strong history of cooperatives, not only in Jamaica, but across the world, make them a sturdy base for societal development. And I think that we should return to our roots in respect of cooperative unions, associations, where they can effectively assist us in our sustainable development goals. All right, so there are a number of different types of cooperative societies. The consumer cooperative is owned by consumers to eliminate middlemen and to establish direct relationships with manufacturers and wholesalers. These are formed to ensure a steady supply of high quality goods at a reasonable price. And in a number of places, these cooperatives are used to source, for example, grocery for their members and to ensure that that aspect of the family budget is kept low. The producers' cooperatives. Now, these are formed to help members in procuring inputs for the production of goods and services. These societies generally provide raw materials, tools, equipment, and common facilities to members. Now, one example of this is well, it used to, the Coffee Growers Cooperative Federation, and another, the Flower Hill Producers Cooperative over there in St. James, which produces bammies. Cooperative marketing societies is another type of cooperative societies. Now, these are formed by small producers who find it difficult to sell products and make profits on their own. This cooperative is aimed at ensuring that there's a steady market for the product sold by the cooperative's members. The products are pooled together and sold at the best price. Cooperative credit societies are formed to provide financial help, right, in terms of loans to their members. The funds of these societies consist of share capital contributed by members and deposits made by them and outsiders into the capital of the society. The funds are used to provide loans to members on good terms, as I said earlier. And, this kind of society would have protected Jamaicans from low income homes from money lenders who would have been lending money at exorbitant interest rates and so on. And so the establishment of thrift societies and credit unions went very far to alleviate that kind of issue. Examples of these societies include our very own credit union here on campus, Infinity Cooperative Credit Union, which was established from the merger of Educom Cooperative Society and Gateway Cooperative. And Infinity, of course, is a member-focused financial service provider and a member of the umbrella group of credit unions in Jamaica. Now, the cooperative farming societies, these comprise small farmers who join together and pool resources for cultivating lands collectively. These societies aim to achieve economies of scale, of large scale farming, and of course, to maximize agricultural output. Now, there's another cooperative, the housing cooperative. And of course, this list is not exhaustive because you can find cooperatives in just about every area of life. But the housing cooperative is established to allow members to purchase and construct housing, right, at an affordable rate. And members, of course, will be at the helm in terms of the management and the ownership of the property that is subject to the cooperative. Let's look at the statutory definition. So Section 4 of the Cooperative Societies Act defines the cooperative society as a society that has its object the promotion of the economic interest of its members. Remember, I said earlier that the the ICA's definition was broader, right? It included the social interests of the members, but here our act is focused on those cooperatives that have as their objective furthering the economic interest of the members of the society. So a society that has as its object the promotion of the economic interest of its members in accordance with cooperative principles, and one which consists of not less than 10 members. All right. Now, it also includes a secondary society established for facilitating the operation of a society described above that comprises at least 2 registered societies as members. So either of those would constitute a cooperative society for the purposes of the Cooperative Societies Act in Jamaica. Now, in order to be registered under the Act, formation requires that the cooperative be registered. Registration involves the execution by the steering committee of an agreement with the Department of Cooperatives and Friendly Societies, which of course is the regulator over this industry, to complete an application form, pay a processing fee of $2,000. So it's very easy to form and deliver to the registrar of cooperatives 3 copies of the society's proposed rules, a detailed business plan, and share listing outlining the minimum share capital to be invested by each member. And of course, that application needs to be signed by at least 10 founding members, as I said before, because given the definition, there must be a minimum membership of 10 members in order to form the society under the Act. All right. And so the Act itself prescribes that the society have rules which would dictate the management of the society. In the case of credit unions and thrift cooperatives, the formation requirements are greater. Now, they must show that they are capitalized up to a minimum of 6 million, and they must as well file with the registrar several policy and procedure documents, as well as a disaster recovery and business continuity plan. Now, the Act says at Section 5.1 that only societies registered under the Act may use the word cooperative in its name. And so any other entity which would seek to do that will not be able to register using that name, because that designation is left only to the societies that are formed under the Cooperative Societies Act. Now, once registered, once the registrar is satisfied that the formation or the registration requirements have been met, she will issue, or he will issue, so he right now, will issue a certificate of registration and return 2 copies of the approved rules of the society to the members. He will also publish a notice to that effect in the Gazette. Now, the certificate of registration, of course, is conclusive proof that the society is duly registered under the Act. The society gains legal status by virtue of registration and becomes a body corporate under the Act, having a separate legal personality from its members. And I know my students know by now what flows from that. what incidents flows from that. And so the society has perpetual succession. It doesn't matter how much the membership of the society changes, the society will continue in existence. And that's wonderful when we think of what it may mean for persons of limited means coming together to do business. They can enter into contracts. They can be sued, so they can bring suits as well as defend suits in their own names, etc. Now, the society is governed by the Cooperative Societies Act and regulations, and the rules of the societies, that is, the approved rules, the rules approved by the registrar. Let's consider membership. Now, as I said earlier, members must be at least 16 years old, which is pretty neat. And so teenagers can join a cooperative society. There must exist between the members of the society some common bond of occupation or association or commonality of residence by community, neighborhood, or district. And so we find that some of these are parish specific, where they're established in a parish, and so that is the commonality or the common bond that exists between the members. Or in the case of employee cooperative societies, they're all employees at a place. Members are bound by the rules of the society, and the act prescribes that members are required to contribute to the society before becoming members. And so that, of course, is left up to the rules and for the founding members to agree in terms of a construction of what that contribution should be and what it should look like. The Act has a built-in dispute resolution mechanism which requires that disputes touching the business of the registered society among members, past members or persons claiming to be members, or between the society and its committee or an officer of the society, between registered societies, that these should be referred to the registrar that supervises cooperative societies. Now, this includes matters involving debts owed to the society. And I know that you would agree with me that this is more efficient than leaving it open for members to run down to court every time there's an issue between them. Matters are referred by the registrar. So wherever there's a dispute now that's referred to him, the registrar will refer that dispute to an arbitrator. An appeal lies from the arbitrator if a party is aggrieved by the ruling of the arbitrator to the registrar. And then the registrar's decision in respect of those disputes between members be final. The Act provides at Section 18 that members may nominate persons to receive their interest upon death, and it also makes provisions for the withdrawal of a member from membership by giving notice under Regulation 10 of the Cooperative Societies regulations. Now, if we remember our earlier definition, it said that a society, the cooperative society, is a society that has as its object the promotion of economic interest of its members in accordance with cooperative principles, right? But what are those principles? And so the cooperative is founded on some governing principles, which are also referred to as the Rochdale Principles. Now, although there's no statement of these principles in the legislation, when you look at the provisions, a number of the provisions seem to harken back to the principles or give way to exactly what is contemplated here in the Rochdale Principles. So there's no statement about these principles in our legislation. These principles were understood to be first formulated by the Rochdale Society of Equitable Pioneers in 1844. Now, the Rochdale Society of Equitable Pioneers were a group of 28 impoverished weavers who came together to establish a store for the sale of affordable quality clothing. And they did this in response to what they were experiencing at the time, given the impact of the Industrial Revolution on their industry. And so what they found is that if they came together and they produced these things, then they could sell them at the best price possible, and then they all would gain, notwithstanding the impact of the factories and so on that they would have to compete with. The original Rochdale Principles were officially adopted by the International Cooperatives Alliance, the ICA, in 1937 as the Rochdale Principles of Cooperation. Updated versions of the principles were adopted by the ICA in 1966 as the Cooperative Principles and in 1995 as part of the Statement on Cooperative Identities. And so these principles are guidelines by which cooperatives put their values into practice. And so the first one that is there on the slide is voluntary and open ownership. Now, as voluntary organizations, the cooperative is open to all persons able to use their services and to anyone that's willing really to become a member and to accept the responsibility for membership without any regard to gender, social, racial, political, or religious discrimination. The membership of the society is unlimited under the Act, right? And it cannot be restricted. And so, although you have to have at least 10 members, then upwards from there, you can have any number of members. But the membership is open and it's voluntary. So, it's based on the decision of somebody who is willing to participate in membership, to pay the membership fee to join and to comply with the rules. That person who is agreeing to be bound by the rules can join the society. There is no discrimination there in respect of gender, social, racial, political, or religious discrimination. The society is also characterized by democratic member control. Every member of the cooperative has a seat at the decision-making table, right? Generally, members have one vote, irrespective of the shares held by them. Now, we know that that might be a little bit different when we consider the limited company, for example, where certain shares may carry greater voting rights than others, for example. And so at Section 26 of the Cooperative Societies Act, it does provide that each member will have one vote. Note, however, that the Act also provides that in the case of a society for the marketing of agricultural products, the rules of the society may provide for voting rights to be determined by reference to actual or estimated registered amounts of the product marketed. And so that ability to vote there or voting rights may be attributed in keeping with that metric, provided that that is so in the rules of the society, the marketing society for agricultural products. Now, supreme authority, in keeping with this idea of democratic member control, supreme authority is vested in the general meeting of the society under Section 17 of the Act. Societies are mandated to have annual general meetings once the report of the audit of the accounts of the registered society by the registrar is received by the committee. So again, the members of the society who have voluntarily agreed to partner in this way, they all have a seat at the decision-making table and they are able to participate in whatever decisions are taken concerning the society, notwithstanding the existence of a committee that manages the society. Now, member economic, see the autonomy and independence. Autonomy and independence. Cooperatives are autonomous. They are as self-help organizations. They're controlled by their members, as I said a while ago. If they enter into agreements with other organizations, including governments, or they raise capital from external sources, they do so on terms that ensure democratic control for their members, and they continue to maintain their cooperative autonomy. Loans are only made to members of the cooperative by virtue of Section 31 of the Act. Another Rochdale principle that underpins cooperatives is education, training, and information, the provision of training to those persons that are involved in the society. So whether members or employees of the society, whoever the stakeholders are, cooperatives ought to foster the continuing education and development of those that are involved with them. They ought to also inform the general public about the very nature and benefits of cooperation. Now, I know that you would see that from especially the credit unions. I keep going back to the credit unions because I believe they are the most visible and active cooperative that we are familiar with, and they do a lot of public education. They may host talks to their members and so on, by way of education and training. Now, another principle is the cooperation among cooperatives. And so the facilitation of that kind of relationship among cooperatives. This strengthens the movement through local and global structures. We see this in a number of ways here in Jamaica. For example, with the Association of Credit Unions, that is the Jamaica Cooperative Credit Union League, to which our credit unions belong. Now, this league was established in 1942 as a centralized cooperative body. There's one that's missing from the list on the slide, which is member economic participation. Members contribute equitably to the capital of their cooperative, and they democratically control that capital as well. At least part of the capital is usually the common property of the cooperative. And so the Act provides that a sum is held on reserve under Section 35 of the Act. 20% of the net profits must be maintained as a reserved fund. Now, the Act says that that sum may be reduced to not less than 10% of the net profits if the registrar approved. And so there is some amount, or there is a mechanism here in the Act which ensures that there is some capital maintenance. No person can hold, in addition, the Act provides that no person can hold more than 20% of the share capital of the society under Section 28 of the Act. Now, members usually receive limited compensation from these societies, and they allocate surpluses for any or all of the following purposes: to develop the cooperative, to set up reserve, as this reserve fund, part of which at least would be indivisible, and so much of what the cooperative earns in terms of profits is used to fund the cooperative itself. Of course, members may also share in any surplus. Right. And so the very last principle that is there is the concern for community. Now, this speaks, of course, to the cooperative's involvement in the wider society, in the communities in which they are established. And, as we look at the history of cooperative societies in Jamaica, we see that these societies have been very active throughout, following on from the 19th century into now in terms of fostering sustainable development. Credit unions ought to be actively engaged in fostering development in the communities in which they do operate. And so we'd see them adopting a school, for example. That's one of the, I think, low-hanging fruits. We would see them do that, establishing, for example, in a school, a lab or a tech facility. So those are the Rochdale principles, and they essentially underpin the functioning of the cooperatives in Jamaica. As the definition in the Act says, the society must be established in accordance with those cooperative principles. And so that is the singular thread that runs through all of them, irrespective of whether or not one is a housing cooperative or it is a cooperative that is established to market the products of the members. All right. Now, the funding of the cooperative, as I said, there's much said in the Act about the capital maintenance in respect of the reserve fund under Section 35 and the payment of fees by members in the society by virtue of the legislation, the rules of the society. Now, finally, I wanted to speak a little bit about the way forward in respect of cooperative societies. Now, as we saw from our discussion today, these societies are very easy to form. Now, a lot of devastation came out of Melissa. But when we think about the ways in which cooperatives can be used to further the common good, to cause one hand to wash the other, I think that we must now begin to think again about how much they can impact community development going forward. And so when we think of housing cooperatives down in the West, might that be a good solution for providing housing for low income earners and even for the elderly? That might be an answer at this time. Or even the establishment of consumer cooperatives, such as the grocery cooperatives that we see in the United Kingdom. I think some thought should be given to that. And, it is not an area of the law. I think that lawyers have a lot of interaction with, so to say, except that they are specifically in the field or that they're in-house counsel at a cooperative. But I think that we need to begin to think again. When we think about food insecurity, for example, should we be looking back now at the very generic thing that helped us to develop strong agrarian societies, not only in Jamaica, but in the Caribbean? When we begin to think about now replanting those lands that were subject to devastation under Melissa, should we be thinking about formulating societies for the very purpose of doing that so more of us can hold land and more of us can benefit from the fruits of the land in that way. So thank you very much for listening. That's my presentation this morning. I hope I didn't go over time, Miss Polly. I tried to keep it to the time. And thank you for having me.
So we want to thank Ms. Brown for a detailed expose of how cooperative developed and her comments on how we can use cooperative associations in moving forward after the devastation of Hurricane Melissa. I don't know if there are any members of the audience, whether online or in the room, who have any questions that we may deal with. I think we have time for one question. Is that so, Mr. Cousins? We may have time for one question before we need to wrap up. Are there any no questions? In that case, no questions? Okay. In that case, I would invite Miss Khalees Timbrell, another one of our students here at the Norman Manley Law School Legal Aid Clinic, to move the vote of thanks.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Miss Timbrell, and on behalf of our Norman Manley Legal Aid Clinic, we want to thank you for such a wonderful and thorough presentation and for giving us your time because we know you're a very busy woman. Thank you very much, Mrs. Brown.
Right, so that takes us to the end of our first presentation for the day. We should return within the next 5 minutes for our second presentation of today, treating with cooperatives as a tool, cooperatives as a tool for sustainability by Dr. Gregory Roberts. We will start with him in short order. And so we invite you, ladies and gentlemen, after the end of today's presentations, that you may visit our YouTube channel to see or to listen to the presentations that were made yesterday and which will continue for the remainder of this week. We also invite you to come in person to join us here on Thursday at the Norman Manley Law School, the Gibraltar Hall Road facility, where we will have an open day with our legal aid fair. We thank you for joining us this morning and ask that you join us for our second presentation at 11:10. Okay.